You're listening to Achtung Millwall, broadcasting from the beautiful South Bermondsey. Accept no substitute.
Hello, dear listeners. Well, it wouldn't be Millwall if it wasn't dramatic at the Den, would it, dear listeners? And today's news, shock news, I've got to be honest with you, of the return of Neil Harris, the end of Joe Edwards. Joe Ball is over. It's going to be Neil Ball back. It took me by surprise. Aaron had actually put something on our group chat last night, but I was in bed. I was tucked up in my warm little bed last night when it all started doing the rounds on our group chat, dear listeners. So I woke up to it all this morning. I must admit, I thought it was mad enough to be true. The return of Neil Harris, 4 years on from his departure, in the wake, obviously, of a collapse of form at that time, if that sounds familiar. And the end of Joe Edwards, it seems. Now, we've just come off of a Twitter space conversation featuring myself, Aaron, Harry, Michael and Neil Fiss. I'm going to play that for you very, very shortly, but I just want to do this as a brief intro to explain the circumstances by which we come to be talking. I will be doing a separate show when I can recover my senses, and I've got the voicemails collated. Probably going to be tomorrow, I'm going to guess, but I will try and include everyone's voicemails that have been sending copy to me. Big thank you to everyone for doing that. But that'll probably go out separately tomorrow or possibly the day after. I don't know. As soon as I can get my shit together, as they say. But for now, we're going to go over to the Twitter space call earlier on.
Achtung, Millwall.
Hello, dear listeners. Well, I don't know if anyone can hear me out there. Can anyone hear me? Aaron, Harry, can you hear me? That's cool. And you, Harry, that's called Muzak. That's designed to keep people amused whilst you speak into the ether with not knowing that your mic is on mute. Let me just do an intro for everyone. I've invited Fizz and I've invited Michael. Listeners, anyone out there, I'm going to be a bit picky as to who I invite because these get very, very chaotic. So forgive me. I've invited Aaron, Harry, Neil and Michael, as it's an impromptu show. Big welcome to Neil. Can you hear me, Neil and Michael?
I can indeed. Before we start, can we just have a minute's silence for the death of Millwall Football Club? You were killed on this fine day by Steve Kavanagh and Alex Aldridge. 140 years of history gone completely down the pan thanks to an ex-journalist with who relies on Football Manager to do his scouting and a West Ham fan. I think that makes my position perfectly clear.
You get off the fence. Get off the fence, Neil Fisher. Big welcome to Neil. We've got Aaron, we've got Neil, Michael, and Harry. Now I know everyone is. I'm the only one who's probably not working here, so I've got the the time on my side. But anyone that needs to come and go, please do, boys. We're speaking, listeners. Obviously, in the aftermath of this, frankly, amazing news. I don't think I'm alone in saying I was. You often use the word gobsmacked, but I think it's appropriate for this situation. The return of Neil Harris to the Den in what are pretty dire circumstances, listeners. We are obviously sitting just 1 point above the relegation spot. We've got a trip to Southampton now on Saturday, which was never going to be an easy one. But this is a dramatic and bold move. I'm leaving aside Neil's position early. I mean, Aaron, let's bring you in to start us off with, mate. Bold move. You got wind of this last night, I understand.
Well, I mean, you can check out our infamous group chat.
I can.
I messaged the lads about 11 o'clock going, is anyone awake? And I got a couple of replies, and I said that Neil Harris was going to be coming back to Millwall as manager. A few of them thought I was maybe I'd had a bit of the old happy juice, but no. I've been reliably informed that he'd said goodbye to his Cambridge players after their defeat to Bolton, and that Neil Harris will be joining Millwall on an 18-month contract. Naturally, obviously, I told you guys and told you to keep it in our little circle because you just don't want to rile people up and rile a fan base up when people are raw at the moment because of the state of things. You know, the run of form is woeful. And yeah, this morning made a few calls, pinged a few messages, and got wind of it that it is true. Neil Harris will be returning to Millwall today to replace Joe Edwards. It's a move that I think the club believe will galvanise fans to have someone of his stature, of his importance at the football club, back to lead them through some choppy waters. Will make a difference, because I think it's fair to say that this situation with Joe Edwards, it's just gone on too long now. It's run its course, and we're kind of ready for a change, aren't we? Especially with Southampton to come at the weekend, and the mood they're going to be in. They'll be up for a cricket score. I mean, look, they went 25 unbeaten, and now they've lost 2 out of the last 3. So definitely something which has been thought about. I'll be honest, I did expect a change to be made after the defeat to Sheffield Wednesday on Saturday. I think the comments that Joe Edwards made were interesting, where he turned around and said that it's not really fun to be at Millwall. And it isn't fun, is it? It's not going to be fun. But even then, there's an element of PR needed. And I think that maybe shows a bit of naivety. Look, he's 38 years old. Hopefully he will come again, because there have been signs, if not minute signs, into what he can do and what he can offer. But this was just a job too far, and will be looked at as a grand mistake by the Millwall board. And now they are going for a trusted hand. They're going for someone who knows the club, who knows the fan base, who will put the team, will make the team play a certain brand of football.
Yeah, I'm going to bring in Michael and Harry. Boys, I mean, Harry, you are the number one Neil Harris fan club member, of course. We know that. But I'm going to put aside the jokey side of it. I mean, I said on our group chat that we have, effectively, as Aaron's just said, 13 cup finals to get through to preserve our championship status, which is essential, in my opinion, for the good of the club. How do you see this? I mean, you're going to be over the moon, I'm going to guess. I'll ask you, Michael, afterwards.
Yeah, I think the most important thing for me is that I agree with everything that Aaron said, in the sense that something did need to change. I think the thing you say with 13 cup finals is very important. I think that suits a Neil Harris Millwall mentality, in the sense of, if there's anyone that's going to get what we need for 13 games to get us out of the shit, it will be Mr. Neil Harris. He lives. Let's be honest. When was the last time a Millwall side under Gary Rowett or under Joe Edwards or under Aaron Barrett in any of his games, have you turned up and expected Millwall to beat a team that we are not expected to beat? I can't honestly say that I've seen that since probably Neil Harris was in charge. I think he is a master of getting, or was a master out of getting more than the sum of their parts. Now, we know this squad last season was a point away from the playoffs. And now it's a point away from relegation. That can't happen. I think the squad, you mentioned it the other day, I think the squad's let itself down and let the memory of John down. And I do generally believe that there's someone to instill the values of the club that we love, is Neil Harris. Does that mean that, we're going to turn the corner overnight and we're going to turn into Brazil and it's going to be just like before? I don't think that's necessarily true. But I am happy that the club have made a decision. And realistically, for the people that are, what can we say, negative and see it as a massive backward step, whatever we did, if you get relegated, it's a massive backward step. So there's not, the market's moved on in terms of who was available when we got rid of, when Gary Rowett left, or got rid of, whatever way you want to put it. We went for somebody that no one knew about, and it's backfired. So now they've gone for the opposite. They've gone for somebody that they do know about and they know well. So, that's how I feel on that, at being as level-headed as I can be, kind of thing.
That's good. Very well done for staying level-headed there, H. I like that. Michael, I'm just looking at some of the online. There's masses of online reaction, but Danny Baker, who obviously like this decision, perhaps draws mixed views from the Mill support. But Danny Baker's posted, Mill asking Neil Harris to come back smacks of the return of Terry Hurlock desperation stunt. How do you see it, Michael? I mean, I personally admired the ambition of the Joe Edwards move, and we've said a few times I like where it's targeted, but its results don't lie, mate, do they?
No, they don't. And I'll be honest with you, I'll hold my hands up. Everyone knows who's been listening, and even away from the pod who I sit with, I was a big believer in the Joe Edwards, what he was trying to do. Maybe not necessarily him as an individual, but like you say, the direction the club was going to go in. Because again, we'll talk about Neil Harris's return shortly, but we'll talk about his previous reign. It got stale under Harris. It got stale
It
under
did.
Rowett.
Yeah.
It got, and this guy come in, he was something new, he was something fresh, he was something a bit different, and he was something that we as a club hadn't seen before. And you know, Nick, you and I said it off air the other day, and I'm going to sound like some of you will start laughing about this a little bit, but I've recently been listening to the Pep Guardiola's podcast, and there was the bit where he goes to Man City. You might remember our conversation, Nick, but where he goes to Man City, and then you got all these people ringing up, going, you know, the brand of football he wants to do isn't suited for Man City. The brand of football won't work here. You know, he's good here and he's good there and he's good everywhere else, but he won't be good here. And there's a little bit of me with Millwall fans that's a little bit like that, where it's a bit like, look, we do have to move with the times. And yeah, maybe Joe Edwards as an individual wasn't the best appointment. And maybe what I just said to Guardiola with the resources may not have been the best example. But in a sort of kind of nutshell way, this is the way the football is going. So yes, as much as I do love Neil Harris, I mean, my boy's called Harris for goodness sake, after Neil Harris. I love Neil Harris. Every Millwall fan does. But if he can keep us up, absolutely brilliant, superb. But let's not forget, sorry, but this was a manager who took over Gillingham. They went down and then he got sacked from there because the brand wasn't good for League Two. He's at Cambridge, seems to be doing all right, but they're only 6 points from the drop in League One. There's a little bit of me that thinks, yeah, do you know what? He will bring the club together behind the scenes and the fans, and everyone loves Neil Harris, and I'm not denying that. But for me, it's the proverbial, as I said to Aaron the other day when I saw him, it is the massive whacking plaster over quite a gaping hole in a pipe at the moment. It will fix it short term.
With all respect, on the whole, style of play front, that's something that's going to take a long time to implement. And again, we're talking about when we met the other day. I said to you, you can't put a Renault truck in the Formula One and expect it to run.
Yeah.
This squad doesn't have, and again, I say this with the greatest respect, there are individuals that don't have the football intelligence to do things that Joe Edwards wants them to do. I also think that for a new head coach, that is the biggest baptism of fire of a job available. You cannot go into that football club and expect to be given maybe time and patience because you want to try and pull off a certain brand of football. There's moving with the times, but there's also being realistic and understanding that the championship is like wacky races. And it's just simply a case of putting, points on the board and evolving a style. If you are a club like Burnley and you want to move away from Sean Dyche and you want to bring in Vincent Kompany, you back him with resources. And yes, he has been backed to an extent, but there's a big difference between Burnley's resources, and I'm using them as an example, Burnley's resources and Millwall's resources. And it just, this job screamed for an experienced manager when Gary Rowett left, and there were plenty available. The ones that I thought maybe should have taken over, one of them was Nathan Jones, and I think he was very disappointed he didn't get the job. In fact, actually, no, he was very, very disappointed he didn't get the Millwall job. And the other one was Neil Warnock, purely because it would have just been funny, romantic, and a bit bonkers. And if I'm honest with you, I think if Neil Warnock was manager of Mill, they'd be in and around the playoffs. I just think it would have had that effect where an old foe comes back and takes the club forward. But this is the situation we find ourselves in, and it will be Neil Harris who takes the club forward.
I just want to touch on that. Sorry, can I just touch on that? The idea. I agree with the idea that we need to move with the times and that. But if we go back to all the months ago when we done the pod after Joe Edwards was appointed, and me and Aaron both said the right thing, or what's turned out to come to pass, is that it's great having a style of play on paper, but we went for a Pep when we should have gone for a Klopp. Now, watching Ipswich's McKenna, they play a Klopp style of win the ball back type of football, which suits kind of which is a modern version of Millwall's sort of win the ball, play with wingers, be exciting, go with pace, get the surge, get the crowd behind you. That the kind of football when they appointed this young coach they should have gone for. But they went for the pass style to death. That they wanted to play under Joe Edwards. And as Aaron rightly says, at the end of the day, we didn't have the players to play that. And I don't think when they appointed him, I think they thought we were safe enough to have a season where, we can take getting beat 3 or 4 in a row and then we'll pick up a win and we'll be safe and we'll be fine. And that hasn't come to pass. And now we are, we've hit the iceberg and now we're scrambling for the lifeboats. And that's kind of where the club is to me. Obviously, you've got the massive elephant in the room of the TV deal, the new negotiated Championship TV deal, which is worth a hell of a lot of money compared to what it has previously been. And also, basically, it's the start of the screwing of League One and League Two clubs in comparison to what they previously got compared to Championship clubs, which I think is vitally important to remind yourselves in the background of this decision.
One thing I will say, sorry, Nick, just very quickly, sorry, and then I'll let you go on. We're talking about like what the players can do and what the players can't do, etc. And I'm looking through these comments now, and I'm going to say something now that's going to start a barrage of comments, but comment in if you're listening so we can see what you're saying. But I mean, I'm looking through some of it, and they're saying, like Jay Shaw here, he can't do any worse. Hopefully, more basic style of play will help with the limitations of our players. It probably will, but this is where your director of football needs to step up in the summer and go, do you know what? Neil Harris has kept us up with this load of players who aren't very good at what they've done. Here you go. There's your P45. Cheerio, off you go. Because we can't keep having this every 3-4 years that we get to a point where we just miss out because we're just not good enough. And then it all goes belly up and we're fighting for our lives again. We need to have a longer term plan in place. Sorry, Nick, back to you.
No, I was just going to bring Neil in. Obviously, we started off with some fairly Neil Fissler comments, didn't we, Neil? And I'm just looking at a post here by the man in Block 11, who I love, and he's got a sarcastic turn of humour that I love. And he's got a picture of Alex Aldrich where he's put some shades on him, and I'm watching a Polish-made murder series where he's made Aldrich look like the serial killer that's cast in this. It's called The Defence. It's very good. It's on Channel 4 if anyone wants to watch it. But he looks for all the world like the serial killer in The Defence in this picture. But Neil, I mean, you cast some fairly big claims at the start. I mean, it appears that Neil's going to be head coach under a director of football, which is the aforesaid Alex Aldrich still. I mean, that's an odd move, I think.
Yeah, well, let's not forget who appointed Aldridge in the first place.
Well, Neil did, didn't he? Yeah, Neil.
Well, whose mate Aldridge is? Yeah,
Is it appropriate?
A massive backward step for our football club. What we're forgetting is that we've got a group of players in that dressing room who are not good enough. They're not good enough for this football club, and they won't be here next season. So they couldn't give a monkeys about what happens to this club. And you're hoping, what's Neil Harris done since he left this football club? Absolutely zero. The square root of fuck all.
Got Cardiff to the playoffs.
Well,
okay.
So what?
I'm playing.
So
I'm
what?
playing
Yeah, no, but you're just a fanboy, yeah. Yeah, well, I'm going to go where you were. Yeah, when Gary Rowett was in charge of this football club, I'm not going to be objective. Yeah, because you're the worst of the lot. To be quite honest,
I take that as a badge of honour. I take that as a badge of honour.
You are the worst of the lot. Yeah, this is a disastrous move for this football club.
I mean, we've got
What makes anybody think that he can get a tune out of players that Rowett and Edwards couldn't? They couldn't care less.
But Neil,
they're not in a job next season. They're not here.
On
They're
the
not
assumption,
earning £15,000-20,000 a
but
week.
on the assumption that something's got to be done, Neil, because we're in this position with 13 games. Realistically, at the moment, we're
Something
13
has
games.
to be done.
We're short of. We're dropping like a
100%.
stone. We're 13 games away from League One, with all that Harry's just said, the loss of income, all the things that we take the piss out of, the Groupon stand, the foreigners won't be coming here, the money won't be flowing. And that's where we are. So something's got to be done. Now, Aaron has, mentioned names like Nathan Jones, and who's now gone to Charlton, but also Warnock and others like that. I'm guessing that this was
the lazy decision. This was the decision to keep people off my back, because there are people like Harry, that will turn up week in, week out. And if we go down under Neil Harris, well, we tried.
I'm just looking at a few comments online here. I mean, Stan saying on the point Michael's just made, surely Alex Aldridge's AA's position is untenable after this U-turn. His job is to have an overarching strategy and execute it through recruitment of players and management. He is now creating the chaos that he's hired to avoid. I mean, Joe Ball, as I've come to call it, Joe Ball, Neil, with the squad we have, is was always going to be like painting a Leonardo da Vinci with an Asda set of paint box. It's going to be semi-impossible with this current squad of players to change so dramatically.
Yeah, the problem is that even under Harris, we didn't do what we needed to do, and that's put the ball in the opposition's box to put it in the back of their net.
I agree with that. Yeah,
I
agree with that.
That is the fundamental problem of what the root of all of this is. You score more goals than the opposition, and under Neil Harris, that didn't happen. And why people think he's going to get a tune out of these players, it just absolutely defies belief.
I mean, Harry, Terry, Lions Roars saying here, I've just said now this smacks of trying to appease the fans, like when Holloway, or Holler Twat as he calls him, Holler Twat, gave Sid Nelson the captaincy. Is there a touch of that here, or is it motivational? How do you see it?
I think it can be true of all those statements. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? I think it is. I understand what Neil's saying, but I don't think the club have left themselves any choice. I think that's what we're all agreeing in a roundabout way, is that the club have backed themselves into a corner and they've hit the Neil Harris button. They could have been anyone, I suppose, realistically.
Yeah, that I would agree with. That I would 100% agree with.
So from their point of view, having the information that we don't know everything as fans. Let's make this very fucking clear. We don't know everything as fans. We don't know realistically how much the recruitment process after Gary Rowett left. We don't know who was in charge of that. We don't know who
Alex
made the
Aldridge
final call.
In charge of that, he's already said.
Well, you're assuming is it not a Reg
he's
statement of Alex Aldridge?
He came out and said it. And said it.
Yes, because no one's ever lied in the position of their job to cover the blush.
Well, tell me about it. Tell me about it. But so, who do you think was in charge of it?
Well, I don't. My point is, I don't know. I'm playing. I can only deal with what the club's telling me. So if Alex Aldridge was in charge of Joe Edwards, that's fine. But can we at least? My point is, can we at least fucking stay up before we start? Torching the car park for Alex Aldridge and Cav to go. I mean, I'm more worried about events on the pitch in the next 13 games until we can't sack this league.
I agree with that, Harry. I agree with that.
I think the inquiry, it's a bit like COVID, people calling for an inquiry, right? Why the bodies are still piling up. I understand, but let's sort the fucking shit out first, that's how I'd agree with it.
Aaron, I had an interesting message from Doug in Sweden, who I mention often on our show, but he made a good point. I hadn't really thought about it, but the squad visibly wilted in the aftermath of the Queen's Park Rangers game, 2-0. We did not bring anything to that game, and he's made a good point, in my opinion. That clearly something happened, or must have happened, presumably, in or around that match, because prior to that, the Joe Ball was being played, albeit we were going off the boil, but we were playing some decent stuff in phases at that time. And I wax lyrical, and I'll take the mickey out of me, but I wax lyrical about that half an hour versus Middlesbrough, which was the cup game. But we were playing some pretty good football, but we haven't seen anything on that scale at all since. So clearly, presumably, conversations off the field have been taking place about people's future. And I can only presume that you lose spirit and heart when you think you're not wanted and won't be wanted, and your efforts are going to be in vain. So something around the QPR game seems to have gone off the boil at that club.
I don't know if you can just attribute it to that, Nick, because performances have been dire, haven't they?
Yeah.
In general, I think even pre-QPR, there were a lot of question marks. This, make no bones about it, this was a huge risk, a massive risk from whoever's taken the decision to appoint him. From my understanding, it is Alex Aldridge, and it's Alex Aldridge's job to hire and fire. And look, you guys are talking about an inquiry and that COVID thing that Harry said was quite funny, but I'm sure there will be some sort of inquiry led by the Belson family and by
You'd
Steve.
think,
But
yeah.
of course you will. But the priority is to keep this club in the Championship purely because of the financial reasons and reasoning for next year. I think I sort of put it down to what I said before, which is players, and a lot of the players in that squad don't have the football intelligence to play the style of football that Joe Edwards wanted to play. I also don't think that there was as much buy-in from the supporters as expected for Joe Edwards' style of play. And I think if there was someone who came in and, put simply, if they took things up another level, it didn't need to be a style of play change. Just take things up another level, do something a little bit different, have a plan B sometimes. Don't run out of puff like Millwall did under Gary Rowett. I think everyone would have been satisfied. This is a strange season in the Championship where a few wins and you are in there. It's one of those years. And I think there was always that expectation and hope that, Gary Rowett moves on, bring someone else in with a bit of experience and go again. But make no bones about it, this has been a disaster.
Absolutely.
Can I
Absolutely.
make another point?
Disaster.
Go for it.
So basically, let's be honest, right? And let's I say this as a club, regardless of manager, regardless of who we appointed, regardless of who appoints them. Ever since the Blackburn Rovers game last season, this possibly could be the most ridiculously bad 9 months in the football club's history. And I don't think that's an over-exaggeration. I think the loss of our chairman, the loss of the manner of the defeat against Blackburn, then to lose the chairman, then seemingly the puff going out of Gary Rowett for him to decide to walk away or get sacked, whatever way you read into that. And then since then we appointed Joe Edwards, a complete unknown, and now stare into the abyss of League One. If they don't do anything, it would be such a destruction of John's legacy.
Oh, they had to do something, Harry. We can't carry on like on Saturday. I mean, that was the low point. The nadir was on Saturday because to some extent Ipswich, I expected we'd get beaten there. Not quite the manner, but the result, perhaps. But Saturday, a must-win against Sheffield Wednesday, second from the bottom, with all that comes with that, and then to produce such a patsy performance means something has to be done. Now, I still come back to the squad, because I don't think they were playing for Joe Edwards, but we need to do something. And, Aaron's mentioned the likes of Neil Warnock, who is now unavailable. So the only dramatic thing, perhaps, in the armoury is to go to the tried and trusted, which is, there's no greater Millwall legend, whatever people think of the late days of Neil Harris, than Neil Harris, the player, and to be frank, the Neil Harris, the manager, because the best days I've had in the recent decade has been under Neil Harris. Maybe Jacket. I might be doing him a bit of a disservice here, but you know what I mean. Some big days under Neil Harris. We've got. I mean, I'm just looking at a post here by Mr. HK. Big shout out, Mr. HK. Our fan base, he says, and I'm going to come to you, Michael. Our fan base is so bipolar. So many fans say we want our Millwall back. The football is boring, but our fan base only wants one way of playing football. 4-4-2. Big bloke, little bloke up front, balls into the wing, crosses into the box with Harris. This is what we'll get. Is that true, do you think, Michael?
Yeah, I think it is, in truth.
Is that true?
But I think when he says the bipolar, I'm not going to lie. I mean, I sit in block 3, and there's a few around me going like because there were times when he didn't play 5 at the back. It's like, why aren't he playing 5 at the back? Oh, I'll tell you what, against that team, he should be playing. And it's like, we've just handed out a manager who played 5 at the back. I think, but the 4-4-2 goes back to what I was saying before about being a little bit stuck in the times. And I do, and I'm not one of these football revolutionaries. I'll be quite truthful. I think football's getting a tad boring now because all the teams seem to be doing the same thing and all these, hang on a minute, Man City inverted fullbacks once. Let's all do it. They passed the ball around a few times at Barcelona. Let's all do it.
Let's play with no striker.
No striker, let's all do it. But I think the thing is that with me, again, and I said this at the start of the season, and again, I'm not saying this as an I told you so, because I was behind Joe Edwards, and look where that's made me go, or made me look like. But I don't think people also have realised that, like, we've just missed out in the playoffs, and we've done really well under Gary Rowett in the last 3 or 4 years and all this. But let's be honest, the football of the league this year, the division, is so much tougher than it has been in previous years. Millwall's years to go up was about 2, 3, 4 years ago. You know, when you didn't have Leeds down with us, when you didn't have Leicester, who was
We've missed
fancy
some
teams
big
for fun.
opportunities. Missed
You
some
Yeah.
know,
big opportunities.
yeah, the teams who went up again, yes, ironically they beat us, but you know you've got big teams coming up from League One, and with the state of the championship at the moment, I remember the very, very first show of the season that we did pre-season. We was all sat there, and all of you lot. And again, I'm not pointing fingers because again, I get stuff wrong all the time as well, and I'll hold my hands up to that. But we had people ringing, "Oh, there's no reason why we can't be top 10. There's no reasons why we can't go from 8th to aiming for the top 6." And I remember saying, "Well, don't fucking kid yourself, because look who's come down, look who's come up, look who's invested." You know, I think if we end up around that mid-table, we've had a pretty good season. Now, we've probably dropped like a stone more than I thought we were gonna, in all truth, because all the time Burnham and Stoke were there, I thought, we'll be all right. Them two are shocking, but now we're below them. But we can't forget the fact that this is a tough division as well. This isn't the sort of championship level that Neil Harris left when he left Millwall and left Cardiff. This is a lot stronger championship division, and I don't know if Neil Harris can keep us up. I'd love him to. I'd absolutely love him to, but is his tactics of having 3-4 years in lower league football going to keep us up with a side who recently, as we've seen and as we believe, have gotten a thing where they don't want to play for the manager or for the club anymore, but turning its head on the other way round, if these players do suddenly pull their socks up and tighten their boots a bit more and actually give it some, where has that attitude been for the last 2 years? Because the players have clearly got it if they start doing it, so they've let us
Well,
down even more than they have when they were playing the last few weeks.
Some effort will be nice. But Neil, I've got to throw this tweet here at you, mate. This is one for Neil Fissler. I won't name the man, but in 52 years of going to Millwall, I've never been at such a low about our club. It's disrespectful to the Berylsons, the fans, etc. Fuck off Kavanagh, fuck off Aldrich. I still think Pearson is the man to keep us up and go from there. Does he mean Bob Pearson, do you think? He's dead, isn't he?
No, he means the Leicester one.
What's he mean?
Yeah,
Pearson.
he certainly doesn't mean Stuart Pearson, does he?
I can't believe he means Bob. He's dead, isn't he?
No, he's. Yes, he is. Yeah,
Poor old
yeah,
Bob.
no, he is.
And Bob,
But yeah, but
I thought Holloway was the corpse when he was in the documentary.
but let's state a few facts here. Yeah? The players are capable. I do agree with that. Yeah, I think we showed in the Sheffield Wednesday away game. We showed enough over Christmas, didn't we? That we can put a run of games together. We can get some results. I think everybody wants the club to stay up, yeah. And I'm not going to cut off my nose to spite my face. And if Harris does keep us up, I'll be the first one to admit I'm wrong, but I'll be the first one to admit that we shouldn't be giving him an 18-month contract. Yeah, perhaps that's the only reason that he'd take the job. But these players now have to step up to the mark.
They do, I agree.
These players now have to show what they've not showed for the last 6-7 weeks. They've got to show some backbone, some bottle. Yeah, they've got to show some stomach for the fight, because it is going to be a fight. I watched West Brom and Plymouth last night, and the standard isn't great above us. If we can put, I think Aaron might have said, forgive me if it wasn't Aaron, that if we put 2 or 3 wins together, we're out of this mess. That is the most important thing. Is we've got to, everybody has to now come together. I agree we can put off a post-mortem and the demanding of a lynching of Kavanagh and Aldridge until the end of the season. But I think there is some culpability here.
I agree there's got to be an inquest of some sort. I agree. I've got one here for you, Harry, actually. This is from JP. He says, when will people realise that Harris Ball only worked because of the bods we had? He mentions Morrison, Gregory, Jed, Saville, Hutch, Williams and Hutch, and obviously and Sava back in their prime back then.
Okay.
Not to mention that the recruitment under Harris, I'll finish it. It was such as Scalak, Mahoney, Bedvarson, Fielding. I've forgotten him. Jason
Yeah.
McCarthy, and all that ended in shit chance by October. Harry.
Yeah, there was a long time before we got to shit. What's it? 80% of all transfers end in failure.
All careers, political
No,
and football.
It's honestly, that's a stat. As someone who works in scouting, that is a stat. 80% of transfers will fail. I prefer to look at the players that, it's very easy to turn around and say all of the failures under the 5 or so years Harris was in charge.
Scalak, Mahoney, Bod.
Yeah. But I can easily do the ones that are still here that were successes, i.e. Bart, Hutchinson, Cooper, Murray Wallace until this season. There's others that you can name. You can do that about anyone. You could do that about Gary Rowett signings, of which most of them I can't really remember, other than really Fleming. Maybe Denor. That's it.
Denor,
You get right and wrong in everyone. I'm not going to sit here and say that everything that Neil Harris has ever done at Millwall Football Club has been good. But what I am going to turn around and say, there is no one, as we all know, if you love the club and you are bitten by the bug, work's not a chore. And I do feel like that the club seems to be sleepwalking towards relegation. And they've done something, and you can't, whatever happens now, we can't accuse that they didn't try something. Whether you agree with it, that's your opinion and you're entitled to it. The only thing I would turn around and say is a bit like when Edwards got the job, you have to back him. When Harris gets the job, you have to back him. No one wants to get relegated. Turn the den, make the den nasty. Hopefully we'll have a go and we'll see what we can do. That's kind of the headlines out of it. Whether you want them to be here 18 months' time or whatever, that's for the future. That's for the summer. But let's try and stay up in the next 13 games in the immediate couple of weeks to go.
Well, there's the thing. I mean, Aaron, you and me stood together probably the high point in recent times for me, the Everton game, the FA Cup game. We have effectively 13 Everton games to go because we have to survive. We need the crowd to be behind the Mill team. We need them to match that with the kind of energy we saw that night, which was, let's be honest, that Mill team that beat Everton that night was boosted by the electricity from the crowd and became greater than the sum of their parts. That's what we need to rekindle again at the Den, don't we?
When did we last see a proper Millwall performance?
Long while ago.
Busting Den performance. One of those ones where you just leave and you're like, wow, like that was exhilarating. I look back to Sheffield United last year, the Bradshaw hat-trick. Burnley last year, which was the draw, Ashley Barnes and then Bradshaw again, when we thought that Millwall would make it to the playoffs. I mean, if I'm honest with you, the first half against Blackburn, they gave it some. There's just something lacking this season, though. A lot of the big characters, and I mean, you and I mentioned it on our season preview show. Hutch and Cooper, like they were the best centre half combination for me in the league for a while, but things and people change, people age, and you're starting to see, the dents appear in both of those two. They're missing the youthful exuberance of Charlie Cresswell. Tanganga's come in, has played no football at Augsburg. Michael Obafemi's come in, played no football at Burnley. The recruitment hasn't been great, but then again, the recruitment hasn't been good for a long time. It's very, very difficult to pinpoint where this has gone wrong for Joe Edwards. Is it a case of the personnel? Is it the buy-in? Is it him? What is it? What we do know is, as you said, there's 13 cup finals, 13 Everton games to come, starting with Southampton on Saturday. And I mean, if anyone watched that game against Hull yesterday, all Hull did was press them to death. Press them, and they become uncomfortable. And I mean, that's the first thing I'm sure Neil Harris will be telling his players to do at St. Mary's, which I'm actually buzzing to go and watch, which is go and give it, play for the badge. That's one thing you can always say that Millwall players have done. They've played for the badge. They've shown pride in the badge. And very rarely has it been the entire team that have been lambasted like they have and like they were on Saturday. Usually it's been one or two individuals. I can think of a couple against Blackburn. But this is a time and this is a move to galvanise the fan base and to bring everyone together.
It's going to be the only way out with the problem.
It's true. Like this is it now. Just 13 games. 13 cup finals. Let's go, everybody.
I just think we lack character. We have lacked character for a couple of years when it's not gone right. And yeah, I think that shows when as soon as we've conceded one goal this season, you think we're going to lose, and I think that's the mark of where we are as a club in terms of confidence and character. And I think that that needs to change pretty quickly. Otherwise, we'll be playing fucking who are they? Wrexham, maybe. I don't know.
Forest Green aren't in the league anymore.
I think. Do you know what? I think for me, again, I love Neil Harrison. As I said on the last show, I don't want to speak ill about people's characters when I don't particularly know them too well. But as soon as I got those messages last night, Aaron, and as soon as I started seeing it this morning, I was a bit like, and a bit like what Fizz is saying, but maybe not as articulately well put as Fizz. Granted, because I'm not that good with my language as him. But
are you listening to this, Fizzler?
I am indeed. I'm laughing it up.
Big, massive smile on his face.
That's a big hamper coming to the Mr. Avery after this time.
Clearly owe him money, don't I? But it's for me, it just stunk of what will keep the fans quiet for a few weeks. That was the first thing I thought of, and that's not being horrible, Harry. I know you love Neil Harris, and we all love Neil Harris, but the first thing for me was like a bit like with Neil there. It's like I don't see any forward thinking with this move. It's just to keep the noise down.
That is exactly 100% what has happened. Yeah, anybody who can't see it is absolutely deluded.
I think they want to stay up. I don't think they give a fuck about us. I think the money men want us to stay up. I think that's where it comes to, and whether or not.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. That's why at first I thought that, but then after a while I was thinking, yes, people. I'm seeing it in some people's comments about Aldo and Kavanagh and all these people.
Yeah, but it's a gamble. It's a gamble.
It's a gamble. It's a gamble, but it's another one of them where, do you know what? Am I deluded enough to think that our opinion of them is in the forefront of their mind, the first thing they think about, or is it the TV deal? So at first, like I say, Neil, I agree with you there in that sense, but then I'm a little bit of a mixture between you and Harry. Good God, imagine what that would be.
Fucking hell! That's literally a walking version of American Psycho.
You don't make a change, and I mean, as I coined the term on 5 Live the other day, Millwall sleepwalking towards relegation. This club is so far in reverse, and the squad of players just doesn't look up to it. There have been a lot of silly goals conceded. Obviously, trying to bring in the style of play hasn't quite worked, and it hasn't quite gone to plan. But what do? You look around and you look for options, and looking out there right now, who is there? I'll be honest with you. Someone asked me on Saturday, who would you go for right now? And I said Paul Heckingbottom. Whether he would take a job right now at the bottom of the Championship after coming out of the Premier League, I don't know. I just think he'd be a fantastic manager, pragmatic enough. He's kind of like an upgrade on Gary Rowett, but just I thought he would have been a fantastic option. But Neil Harris hasn't just been brought in to shut people up. And I think that's quite unfair. I think he's been brought in because he's a club legend. He gets the place. He understands what it needs, and he's going to be given the opportunity to save them. Don't forget.
But can he get the tune out of them? That's
going to be the 64.
Well, that's going to be the find out.
How much was that TV deal?
You know what? I'm being incredibly cynical here, and I said it to Neil earlier on, and I've just seen a similar comment in the comments below. Sorry, I said it to Nick. I've seen something similar in the comments below. When I saw it, and when Aaron was saying all that kind of stuff, I said to Nick, and do you know what? Again, I'm not knocking Neil Harris. I promise you, I'm not. If anything, this is a bit of a compliment. There's a bit of me that was thinking, have we appointed him because we think we might go down and he can bring us back up?
Well,
can I just bring in a point made by Conor O'Mara?
Yeah, go for it.
Who's somebody that I know because I sat with the family for long enough.
Yeah.
Harris back after being sacked by a League Two team. Why not promote Kevin Nugent till the end of the season?
Because that's Joe Edwards' mark.
Can I just say about this whole Gillingham sacking? I think we talk about being sacked. It's not as straightforward as that. I can't say what it was.
yeah, no, there was undoubtedly some politics involved.
I think we should call it skullduggery.
Skullduggery.
No, I call it snakes.
Yeah, great.
I call it snakes.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's unfair. Look, he's come into Cambridge in a difficult position, where Mark Bonner had sort of evidently exhausted his resources and couldn't take them any further. He's taken them away from the relegation zone. Yes, they were beaten last night, but I think, having watched a clip of John Gregory when he was talking about getting the Aston Villa job, his mind would have been focused on Millwall rather than Cambridge United, because this would have been in the offing. And I mean, I look at it as positive, because after Saturday something needed to change, and it's Neil Harris. It's someone who loves the club. You know that he bleeds blue. He bleeds that football club, and it would kill him to see that football club relegated. So for him to come back and to save this club would be probably one of the greatest honours and biggest achievements of his career.
I'm going to go around the panel. Anyone wants to add anything? Michael, you got anything more you want to say to draw it to a conclusion now?
Good luck, Neil Harris.
Good luck,
Please
Neil
keep
Harris.
us up.
I was sat thinking, what's going to be Neil Harris's first lineup, and I thought Bart, McNamara, Hutchinson,
Sean
Cooper,
Williams,
Wallace.
Dan wants Fred back. He wants Aidan O'Brien back. David Worrell.
Just quickly. Did you see Aidan O'Brien's tweeted like things you love to see? He's probably thinking it didn't work for me at Sutton. I'm back,
mate.
Sean Cummings. It's time, says Dan.
Brian Longman and Tom Bradshaw are up front. That's it. That's I wonder if he drops the keeper. That's what one thing I was wondering. Does he drop?
Yes, because our keeper currently is a fucking tribute act to Jordan Archer.
Never have dropped a bar.
I'm going to wrap it up there, boys. Neil, did you want to add anything, mate, before we call it quits?
R.I.P. Millwall Football Club.
Oh.
Can I add one more thing?
Go on in. One more.
Well, it will be 4-2-3-1, and it will work. That's all I'm going to say.
I want to say huge thank you, Neil, Aaron, Michael, and Harry, for this live show. Fancy that live show. Do send me your voice notes. I apologise to everyone that's been requesting to come on. It just becomes chaotic, listeners. If you have more than too many voices going at once, it just becomes impossible. So what I'm going to say is send me your voice notes. I will put them out, and I will put everyone out that I can within the law separately on a podcast. I'm going to put this out as a podcast as soon as I can get it up on and online. Huge thank you, chats, for joining me today. I think we're probably at the end of the road on the Neil Harris question for the moment. It's going to be an interesting trip to Southampton. So Neil, Aaron, Michael, Harry, Arrivederci Millwall, boys. Bye for now.
Achtung, Millwall.
There we are then, dear listeners. That was the live broadcast. Barely cut. I want to say a big thank you to everyone for listening in, contributing to the show. Big thank you to the chaps for coming on at very short notice to discuss today's shock news. As I said earlier on, I will be back with another edition of the voicemails separately. That'll probably be tomorrow, I'm going to guess, depending on, life. But for now, I want to say a big thank you to you, dear listeners. Do keep the voice notes coming. Let me know your thoughts. I think we're in for a dramatic, one way or the other, we're in for a dramatic conclusion of the season starting at Southampton on Saturday. So, till the next edition of the show, I want to say a big thank you to you for listening, and Arrivederci Millwall. Bye for now.
You're listening to Achtung Millwall.